Okay, Wisconsin Avenue, Blue Mountain Road, almost any
east-west
east-west street. Caught me.
All right, the Administration and Finance Committee will come to order. All 5 members are present. Item 12 is an ordinance removing clerk election specialist and WIC project nutritionist from salary schedule and adding city clerk specialist grade F and lead project nutritionist grade K.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Is there anything else to properly come before the committee?
We adjourn.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Safety and Development Committee will come to order. All members are present. Item 14 is an ordinance updating the zoning code, amending Chapter 19. We had a hearing on this a while back.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion only.
Item 40? I'm sorry.
14?
14.
I think, oh yeah, that's the,
One for discussion only, right?
yeah, that was mislabeled. I'm sorry, Tom,
Oh,
that
it's-
one was mislabeled. That should actually
It
be
says
discussion
ordinance.
only.
Okay.
It says ordinance, but it should have indicated underneath that it's a discussion only, and
It says pass.
Yeah, careful.
mis-
Right.
Motion to
We
reconsider.
trust you, Steve.
yeah.
Yep, that's fine.
So-
Okay, so we're going to hold it?
Actually, if we could just discuss that there's some house cleaning edits within this ordinance that
Sure.
we'd like to just, Zach has got a little presentation he's going to give tonight, and when we passed the ordinance in May, there were some things in now working with it for a couple months that we want to tweak. Most of them are house cleaning edits, but there are 3 a little bit more substantial edits that we'd also like to share with you and get your opinion on before we bring this back to council for public hearing. Thank you. Zach?
All right, yeah. So as Steve said, us at the Planning and Zoning Office and then the City Attorney's Office have kind of been reviewing this over the, it's been in use, in effect for about a quarter now, and we identified a few different changes we'd like to make. One of these is just kind of a technical wording change. We'd like to change the manufacturing districts to industrial districts. Industrial encompasses all manufacturing uses and other uses, so it's more appropriate to have that as the title for the district. Another more substantial new change is to create a new use called advanced manufacturing. This is something that the planning and zoning staff and economic development staff have been brainstorming for some time. There's a variety of different, kind of high-tech, job-dense manufacturing, industries that sometimes have trouble locating in West Dallas because of the kind of limited supply of industrial land. Right now, those would all be classified as light industrial uses. We're thinking of more higher tech type of industries that are using robotics or other kind of technological type of manufacturing processes that are really clean. They don't produce noise, odors, vibration, anything like that. Not even outside the building. Like if you would pass outside the building, you wouldn't even know what's going on in there. We want to encourage the city or encourage these types of manufacturing uses in the city. So, and because of their low impact on neighbors, we'd like to create a new use category for them that can be extended into some of the other districts, like our C3 and C4 districts, because these are more desirable types of manufacturing uses. So we with the help of Kale, we crafted a pretty strict definition that is, manufacturing processes only, and it's, in a manner that doesn't produce any vibration, odor, emission, or noise outside of a building. So light industrial is kind of contained to the site. This is even within the building there. So it's a more strict definition than what we had for light industrial. Any questions about this new use? And I forgot to mention to you, this would be a conditional use in our those C3 and C4 districts where industrial uses aren't typically kind of located, but can be. And then we would have them as a permitted use outright in those in the industrial districts.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, no,
I imagine, and I'm not saying they're coming, but like I say, a chip manufacturer, okay, they're manufacturing an item, but there's no smokestacks, there's no forge,
Yes,
No
exactly.
storage yard.
Yep,
Right.
that's the intent, is to
Right.
those high tech type jobs that not like we see those very often necessarily, but we want to open ourselves up for if there's some small manufacturers or something that are interested in West Dallas, that they'll have more opportunities in the city to actually be located here.
And they'd still be bound by a site and landscape plan for like
Yes.
outdoor storage of materials or vehicles or something
Yeah,
like that.
those rules would all still apply, but where outdoor storage can be located, that's in their accessory use rules. Yep.
The only concern that I have, and I think that's a good idea and I want to go like this, but my concern is heavy trucking. Because if you've got some, like a chip manufacturer, you're still going to have semis coming
Right.
in and out. And the other question I have is, and I don't want to mention any companies' names, but what about a meat packing house? There's one that was trying to locate in Milwaukee. It's out in Franklin. I've been past it many times because there's business out in that area. And there is no odor, smell, or anything emitting from it, but I know it's a very controversial type of industry. It gets people's dander up when they hear it's coming in their neighborhood, even though they don't know that it is a limited impact, except for trucks.
I would say if you're talking about the one on South 60th,
Yeah.
South, when you ride by on a bicycle, you can smell that.
I've never smelled anything there, really.
Yeah.
I don't ride a bicycle though. But I got the
I mean,
windows down.
it's not an open stockyard or anything,
No.
obviously. But, and there's also a business there on that same block that makes aquariums. And the glue that you can smell,
That-
yeah, you can smell that when you ride by on a bicycle. Just saying.
And so certainly neighbors can smell.
So the neighbors can smell it, yeah.
That's something.
How are you gonna determine that in
Yeah.
advance?
Ride by on a bicycle?
No, I mean, before. and
That's the
before you
test.
give a permit to somebody to come
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
How do you determine if it's
I
gonna
think,
smell?
I think from the way this would be set up, the onus would kind of be on the to qualify as an advanced manufacturing use would be they'd have to prove that they meet that definition, and so looking at different things in the industry, and I think with the meat pack related to the meat packing, we can look at that again with Kale, see whether that would qualify as this kind of a thing, and maybe look into some of those meat packing. That's a good thing to
using
think
that as
of.
an
Yeah.
example, but there's
Yeah.
other industries where they do have odor,
Yeah.
and
Hey.
I'm concerned about the trucking also.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, on the trucking thing, these are all still going in essentially the old M1, right?
Steve.
I'm sorry.
These are-
the trucking? Yeah.
No, this use is still going to be in, like, on the map in essentially the old M1. We're not putting these in residential neighborhood.
I was saying, see,
C3 and
C3,
Conditional
oh, okay,
use.
as conditional uses.
That's the whole
So
idea.
we
And
could,
we would have to
so we could look
approve it.
at how,
we have to look
the
at where those areas are.
how the trucks come in and out of their property to access, to get to and from
And
the
so
freeway.
C3 and C4 are typically the Highway 100 corridor, and then near the old Alice Chalmers
Yeah.
site there. That's essentially all the C3 and C4 in the city.
Okay.
So it's those
And if
areas.
it's
and they-
conditional, it would have to come before us.
And it would have
Yeah.
to come before the council as well. Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Haas.
And Zach, remind me, so on the new code, I know C is conditional on the graph there, P is permitted, L, that's limited.
Yes.
And what are some examples of limited or limitations?
So those are just there's a set specific conditions that are set up already in the code. You can see them in there, and if they meet that, they're good to go as a permitted use. So with light industrial, there's certain landscaping requirements. If they meet that 10% landscaping, then they're allowed as a just like a permitted use would be. Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion on this item?
We do have some other. We have a couple
More.
On this item?
We have a couple other slides. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This is a smaller change, but we wanted to incorporate the 2016 state law regarding large cell phone towers into the code. We had these large cell phone towers kind of fit into some other categories we had created, and Kale wanted to better specify these according to that state statute 66.0404. This allows us to regulate the location of these towers through zoning, but it's very limited. Essentially, they have to be allowed in every district as either a conditional or permitted use and meet certain conditions specified in the state statute. So kind of state law kind of presumpts the municipality in this case for the most part. So we've Kale has written this to be as restrictive and city friendly as possible, and then it has to meet those state statutes. But those are some new categories we're creating for the antenna and wireless communication facilities.
And Mr. Chair,
Alderman Weigel.
on the antennas, I see a lot of communities, their cell towers are monopoles essentially, and oftentimes even the antennas will have like a curtain around it, so you don't see the ungainliness of it. is that something that other municipalities are successfully able to negotiate or force upon cell tower builders?
Especially when it comes to like city property, municipal, or Honey Creek Park over there. We have
I guess if it's on our property, we can say that.
With that ring
Right.
around the.
Okay, maybe that's what it's come. I'm thinking one in like Wauwatosa at Hart Park that's a monopole and it's really clean looking. And then I've seen other ones where they don't just have that bird's nest up there like that we see. I can't remember whose property that was on. So we're not really allowed, as you said, there's what we can restrict, and then there's what we could ask for if they want to be on the city's property. Yeah.
And those that qualify as a conditional use may have, the city has additional oversight over those categories. So it's possible we'd be able to, ask for a little bit more. That's something I can look into. We can talk to Kale and see, what exactly
We're
we
still
can
bound by the
qualify.
state statutes,
Yeah,
though. And
it's pretty strict.
Right, I understand there's what we can do,
So,
what we
but
can't do.
We could always ask, sure, and
Yeah.
try to push for it. But I mean,
And now with this new small, I understand this is large cell, but the small cells that we're seeing popping up everywhere now and that's completely out of our control also, essentially.
it's actually statutes required. Considered so the class 2 are the co-locations, the
Yeah,
smaller
yeah.
systems, so those have to be permitted by state statute. So that's where you see them across the board like that. But the class 1s, those are the substantial changes, like the monopoles and the larger types of changes.
Okay, thank you.
A couple other smaller items. There's a few uses that the May 6th code update kind of unintentionally changed how we were regulating, and we're reverting them back to how they were in the past. One of these is a secondhand article store, previously called a resale store. These were allowed throughout our commercial districts. This is where they're just selling, secondhand items, but there's no sort of, donation or selling to them on site. A good example of this is the All Goods store in our downtown. In the code update, these were kind of grouped in through the definitions with our secondhand jewelry sales stores, which the council had previously restricted to that C4 district as a conditional use. So we're proposing to separate out secondhand article in that definition from the secondhand jewelry, so that they just be considered just like any other neighborhood retail or general retail and be allowed in the commercial districts as they were previously. We also have a similar type of situation with adult daycare. Previously, these were allowed in all the same districts as childcare, and there was some changing of our definitions, and they kind of got lumped in with actually a different category, and they weren't allowed in some of those residential districts. So we just want to better specify, have our own category for adult daycare centers to specify that they're allowed in all these districts, as you see below there, and give them that expansion. Where before that, we had essentially unintentionally segregated them into just the commercial districts, which they weren't previously just limited to.
And Mr. Chair, well, one more
One
question.
more.
Before we get too far away from the secondhand article,
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
if a store is buying secondhand goods from customers off the street, that essentially, that all goes through the NUPER system, right? Like pawn shops does, to make sure everything gets registered still. I'm thinking of, I don't know whether it's Pokemon trading cards, if there's still such a thing, or basketball shoes, or whatever it is that the people are buying and selling at some sort of.
The license activity is secondhand article license, and as part of that, that's the.
Okay, so that's all still in there.
Yep. And my understanding too is like those resale businesses, even if they're just selling secondhand articles, they still need that license as well, right?
Yeah.
And then just a summary of some other smaller changes we're making. One of them is to allow 3 to 4 unit dwellings in our commercial district as a permitted use versus a conditional use. This is to better encourage mixed use districts in our commercial areas. Also allow hotels in C2. This was kind of an oversight. There's some weird element of our old code where they weren't allowed in that specific district, and we don't really see a good reason for that. And there was something that was missed in the previous code update. We also just want to better clarify that fences are allowed in commercial and industrial front yards with a site plan review from the staff. We also want to institute caps for our bike parking minimums so our bike parking minimums are based on the amount of square footage. So very large shopping areas like a Target, maybe you would be required to provide 50 bike parking stalls.
Yeah.
That's not going to be used. So we were capping those at, we'd never require more than 10 for certain uses, or never require more than 20 for other uses. We also want to clarify some things in our residential parking code. This is something we've been working a little bit with our neighborhood services. I guess code enforcement now, I believe. That one change we've proposed is to restrict cars from being parked essentially, on the grass or in the part of the yard that's in between the house and the primary street. There'd be an exception for if the garage has to be accessed through a driveway that's in front of the house. But the goal of this is to not allow people to park in the grassy areas of their or of the patio type areas of their yard, but kind of more restrict them to their driveways and the garage itself. We are also proposing just to add some diagrams to better visualize our structural regulations. These would be a link that would be in the code, and then you'd just see it on another page. And we also just have a variety of other small wording changes, essentially. Any questions about these changes?
Okay, one more. Sorry. I was gone a week. When did we start with bike parking minimums?
That was in the May 6th code update.
Okay,
that was
because
part of our parking overhaul.
I know one particular business, they had a bike rack and it's gone now, so, but they weren't required to put it out likely in the first place anyways.
Yeah, that's probably correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
This, the driveway things and parking the cars, it's not gonna affect people that have a circular driveway or anything, is it?
That's we can. I guess that's something. The circular driveways might be different. Yeah.
Because we have those out in the 5th district. I think we might have one or two in the 4th.
We do.
Also,
We have 2 in the 3rd.
We have some L-shaped driveways where the house is built here and the garage is built this way, and the guy's got to come and make a left turn to get into the
Yes.
garage.
So we specifically wrote in a part where it says if you have to access your garage, if you can park your car on any space to access your garage, essentially. So if there is a car, the L turns would be
Paved portion.
yeah, that paved portion it would be allowed. The circular drive we will look into. I think
Yeah, that's
would
probably
be-
the one.
That might be the one that
challenge
has
with
a
this part
challenge.
here that we'd have to.
It's
figure
always
out.
been a challenge. We've talked about that years ago.
Yeah.
And to be clear, yes, we want people to be able to park their car on a circular
Yes.
yard.
Yeah,
I see. Yeah.
Maybe we just.
That'd be absurd. Oh,
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We don't limit the number of private cars to be parked on a residential lot, do we? As long as it's all
On a paved
long as it's
area.
unpaved,
licensed.
not
improved
unpaved.
surface.
Yeah.
Yeah, improved surface.
And
Not
it's
in- not-
licensed and
not
registered.
in front of the house
Yeah.
on the setback, unless it's paved.
And there's some restrictions on the number of axles and the size of the
Yep.
vehicle as
Right.
well. So that wraps it up for this. Just a summary of the timeline. So, Plan Commission has reviewed these and has recommended adoption on the 24th of August. Today is this review with the Safety and Development Committee, and then we would ideally bring this back to Common Council for a public hearing and a vote on October 18th.
Good.
Thank you.
Yep. Should I proceed with the next item? Okay.
We're on a roll.
All right, great. So this is for our site landscape and architectural design review guidelines. When we updated the zoning code, we recognized we had this nice, clean, concise zoning code, but there's some gaps in our design review process. The review process itself is kind of ad hoc. It's kind of unclear how we're evaluating projects to some of our applicants, what we expect. We do have design guidelines. Those were similar to our zoning code adopted very long ago in 1999. We have certain aspects of this that we as staff, and as our plan commission no longer really use or look to. So we want to modernize our design review guidelines to better represent what we're looking for today. And so, with that, it kind of involves two parts. One is our design standards. So those are the quantitative measures, and some of those are already built into the code, like a percentage of landscaping. But there are also design guidelines, which are more qualitative and more subjective. So the design review guidelines we would recommend adopting would include guidelines that are qualitative, as well as a smaller list of technical standards that would live outside of the zoning code. So some benefits of this would be to improve our process. It would make our process more consistent and objective. It would make communication better between applicant staff and the plan commission. It would kind of give us a framework to work with, and for the applicants to kind of understand where we're coming from. And it would also help us leverage better design in our projects by more clearly specifying our expectations and really seeking to enhance our built environment. We conducted a survey it was online. This was in June and July of this summer. This was shared through the news, the email newsletters, the website. There's a news blast on there. It was also shared through our social media channels. We had a really good turnout for this 480 responses. That's over 100 more than our zoning code survey, which also had a really good response as well. So we were pretty happy with how that went. 92% were just residents of West Allis. The other 8% were mostly property owners or business owners who maybe don't live in the city. One thing to note is that 19 or younger group was underrepresented. I know in our zoning code update, that was also a group that we had less of, but we did do some outreach to schools to have some kids fill out the survey, or teenagers as well. This time we didn't really have as much of during the summer, we didn't have as good of channels to get that out to those groups. So it's just something to note. A couple highlights, we saw a really strong preference for walkability, a lot of emphasis on having active outdoor areas, things like outdoor dining, seating, other activities, having a mix of different uses in an area, something people like. Mixing historic designs and new designs is something people liked. The visual preference survey, we asked a variety of questions and showed different pictures for each, and what types of buildings or streetscapes people prefer. For our storefronts, this is one of note, that Kegel's Inn public table with the active outdoor space there. That was the highest rated image. 50% of respondents chose that one out of the 4, where the lowest was our Walgreens here, which was that big parking lot out front, kind of more bland design. That was the lowest rated one.
Which, ironically, I think was the last building built before the city adopted its current set of architectural guidelines. So,
Yeah. Which was still a nice improvement for that time for what was there.
So a couple of the properties, too, that people specifically called out when we asked for what people's favorite buildings were in the city were the West Allis Cheese and Sausage Shop and the Station Number 6 on Beecher Street. People liked specifically those kind of outdoor spaces that they have there. So an overview of the design guidelines. We won't get too far into these today, and we'll share a copy of these with you as well after our communications department is just kind of working on a public-facing version that we would eventually be the document that's adopted. So once that's complete, we'll share it with you. Kind of an overview of the structure, though. It's kind of organized in the past. I guess our design review guidelines were organized by very specific categories of things, colors or things like that. Materials. We're going to be a little broader in our structure here. There's going to be kind of broad goals, which are context, building on the context of the area, contributing to a good public realm, and having good quality development. Those are kind of those 3 broad goals that we want design to be in the community. Under each of those, there's a couple objectives. Then in the design guidelines themselves, those objectives kind of structure it. So there will be 2 pages for each objective, and it'll have 4 guidelines, 4 kind of qualitative measures that we'd like to see a design in the city have. Those are kind of specified out here on the left side, and then we have example images on the right to show how places in West Allis have already implemented those kinds of good design characteristics. The design guidelines that would then be used throughout our plan review process. Before the application, we'd have them available on the website, and we would share them individually with applicants when we're discussing things with them early on, so they have a sense of what we're going to be looking for before the process starts. This would then be the approval criteria that has to be met during our design review. So staff would assess the project based on the guidelines. We would have this kind of checklist that we would share in our staff report that kind of helps us frame our assessment of each project with the Plan Commission and give a more kind of consistent look at these kind of things we're looking at. So this would then inform our staff recommendation and the Plan Commission decision as well. And it would guide what suggestions and comments we have and what conditions we may put on a project. So the timeline, we've been working, we did that survey back in the early summer. Staff has been working on this for a few months, and then the past couple months we've gotten feedback from the Plan Commission. We shared a draft with them last month that they were able to look through. So today is just this overview with the Safety and Development Committee. We would have a Plan Commission vote on the 28th of September. And then we would like to bring this to Common Council for a resolution and a vote on the 18th. And we could hold a public hearing. I don't think it's necessary or it's not required by law or anything. but because this is just a resolution, I believe, but it's, that's an option if you would like to as well. Any questions or comments?
I think it'd be good to have a public hearing. I think we're gonna approve it, but still, it's better to have more openness.
I guess my only concern is that we're gonna be reasonable on planning and not demand all businesses be Taj Mahals. Yeah,
Yes,
you know,
we've definitely
we want good guidelines, we want nice-looking places, but I don't want some poor small businessman to have to spend $1 million to start his business.
Yes, definitely. And we've written them, to make sure there's flexibility in there, but to also just give us the leverage where we want it. But for the most part, a lot of this is qualitative. It's more flexible. There's not as many technical standards and specific numbers in here. So, but we'll definitely feel free to we'll share this with you once we get the final cleaned up looking version.
The only
from
thing that
communications.
scares me a little bit, Zach, and I'll tell you why. Depends on who's
Yeah, and that's the tough part of the design review process. It's always subjective. So
the wrong person gets in the planning department, and all of a sudden we start getting a lot of complaints because you're being overly zealous. So
We'll share the draft with everyone and take a look at it. I guess we don't have to schedule a public hearing for October 18th. We can let it breathe for a little bit until we're all comfortable with what you see.
And Mr. Chair,
Alderman Weigel.
remind me, okay, let's say the business owner and staff can't come to terms. There's an appeal that comes to the council. Ultimately, it's us 10 electeds or 11, including the mayor.
How many do you see?
Yeah, I'm just so that if somebody feels like they're not being heard or whatever, there is a there.
But I think, Marty, I think the problem is the guy either gives up and says, the heck with it, I'm going to Wauwatosa or I'm going to Franklin or whatever.
Yeah, that's the problem because people don't understand. People don't understand that oftentimes there is an appeal for
I know
for
that.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
there's most of the guidelines in here too are things that we already are asking for, and the goal is really to make them clearer so that people know what to expect when they come in, and that's something that sometimes we'll have a business come in and they don't understand. This is something that that we like to see, certain amounts of landscaping or something like that. And
Certain material, like no EFS material on buildings in West Dallas. It's clear. You don't really have to push it too hard.
Yeah.
If it's written down, it's a guideline. Oh, well, the architect or the developer is like, well, I'm not going to bother attempting it.
Yeah,
if it's right here in the guidelines.
Good.
So, yeah,
Okay, good.
that kind of.
that's really the focus mostly. Yeah.
Okay, good.
And is the appeal process listed in there anywhere?
So the appeal process isn't listed in there.
Or zoning code.
It would be in our zoning code where that
Okay.
would.
I'm just wondering, as an applicant goes through all this stuff, and do
point.
we? I think we want them to understand.
I think we want to know there's an appeal process.
Yeah, that there is an appeal process, and we don't have to define it in there, but just say,
We just reference it.
yeah, just reference it. If you have just send them off to the zoning code then on that or whatever. It doesn't have to. Doesn't have to have Kevin's phone number on it.
It could be good to have a little summary too of just the design review process in general in there. We already have summaries on our website, but to bring a little bit of that into the document so that it can kind of be a catch-all document
Good
that
idea.
they can look at too.
Thank you.
Thanks for the feedback. Yeah.
Anything else to come before the committee?
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Just for information purposes, there's a traffic ordinance in Public Works tonight, put on their agenda by mistake. I asked Rebecca to take a look at it.